Hello, my name is Janine, I love watercolor, and today in this video I will show you how to use cheap glitter watercolor to complement your artwork. I have an extra line drawing from a previous video, and this is a perfect way to use it. The first step is to select the colors for the painting. I need my watercolor palette as well as the glitter watercolors. This is a set from the kids section of the store. So they are not a high quality product, but they are still fun to use. Using my swap cards will make the process of selecting the paints easier. I select one color from my Winsor & Newton palette and I select a matching glitter watercolor that is just a little bit darker. I will use the glitter watercolor for all shadows. I would use it for accents, but it is not as consistent and I want to try something new in this video. The watercolor changed a lot while drying, so I had to wait for that before making my decision. I pre-wetten the paper. Taping wood pulp paper down usually does not help a lot with the bulging. The simple solution is to add water to the back side too. Pre-wettening the paper allows the watercolor to bleed out from where I added, creating soft edges in the process. This look makes the painting a real eye-catcher. Sometimes I need to help the paint a little to bleed. Let's continue with the orange watercolor before the painting dries. I have the reference picture open on my tablet to help with identifying the shadows. The style of this painting is somewhat loose. I keep reminding myself that the perfect positioning of the shadow is not needed. Adding them at about the correct area is just perfect. It's more about creating interest by adding these color differences. As the outer edges of the paper are already a little too dry to add the green leaves, I need to re-wetten them. This can be dangerous. When you add more liquid to the paper, it can push the drying watercolor aside, creating unintentional blooms in the process. When adding the green watercolor, you can see how the painting starts to pop. I try to keep it loose and intentionally skip details like adding a second green color. This would distract the eye from the main focus point, the yellow and orange flower. Sometimes adding less details just looks better. I add some color variation simply by adding less diluted watercolor to the shaded areas. And I still need to help the watercolor to bleed out a little. I think this painting is calling for some splatters. Let's start with orange and yellow ones at the top. I also add some green splatters at the bottom area. They make the painting look so much more interesting and they add color to the white areas without decreasing the contrast. Talking about contrast. In order to add some more highlights, I wash out my brush and dry it off, and then use it to soak up some watercolor. Watercolor usually dries lighter than it appears when you first add it to the paper. Once the painting is dry, I can make some corrections and deepen the green color. To preserve the soft edges look, I need to wetten an area which is a lot bigger than the spot where I want to add the watercolor. To prevent the green watercolor from bleeding onto the yellow petals, I'm careful not to wetten the petals too much. As the watercolor dries, I keep a close eye on it for a few minutes, and whenever I see hard edges forming, I soften them with a damp brush. Intensifying the green color made the orange and yellow look pale in contrast. I repeat the same process to add a second layer to the flowers as well. As the paper dries, the color will not bleed out as far on its own. This is a great opportunity to add some smaller details to the flower. This will draw the eye to the flower and the soft edges will be maintained because I'm painting on damp paper. Once the painting is completely dry, I can finally start with the glitter watercolor. I will use it to paint in all the shadows. I keep my tablet in my line of sight with a black and white image. I add the watercolor to the paper and then use a damp brush to blend all the hard edges. Painting on dry paper gives me more control and the ability to place the shadows accurately. Green is next. There is one problem with glitter watercolor. It gets everywhere. So when I'm done, I will wash out all of my supplies thoroughly. This includes the brushes and the water glasses. As a palette, I use the lid of the glitter watercolor. Watercolor and glitter watercolor is a translucent medium. Adding a layer of watercolor as an underwash before using the glitter watercolor on top will just help the color to really shine. I selected a black fine liner for the next step. If you decide to use a marker of any kind, please test them on a spare sheet of paper before using them on your artwork. Sometimes the size of the tip is not what you are looking for, and sometimes you need to give each line some drying time to avoid smudging. With a fine liner, I follow all my well-visible pencil lines to finish up my artwork. As I just showed you, using glitter watercolor is a lot of fun and can create great results. When you're using cheap supplies, you need to adjust your expectation and sometimes your methods. For example, I expect the glitter watercolor to be very translucent, so I add a layer of watercolor first. I hope you liked this video. Please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and thanks for watching.